Hey, what is up, guys? Tyler here with Secure Team. An unimaginable disaster, they're calling it, as Japan declares a crisis due to the unprecedented events that are now taking place at the Fukushima nuclear reactor. Now, this has been all over the news, and if you haven't seen it yet or haven't heard about it, well, new reports have just come out of Japan that the Fukushima nuclear reactor that was basically destroyed and sent into meltdown back in 2011 when the earthquake hit, followed by the tsunami, which then slammed into Japan's coast and totally wrecked the Fukushima nuclear power plant in what has become one of the, if not the worst, nuclear disaster ever on Earth. Chernobyl is another good example. So this happened back in 2011, and ever since then, the Japanese authorities and the Japanese government and the Japanese power companies have insisted that they have the situation under control and that radiation levels were not as bad as previously thought. And of course, the evidence and the data said otherwise. So this sort of created a conspiracy among people online and people on the outside who were looking at this, and it was completely obvious that the high-ups in Japan were trying to cover up the severity of this disaster, and the fact that every day this massive amount of radiation was being leaked into the Pacific Ocean, which then circulated toward our west coast here in America, contaminating the entire water system. But of course, when people started questioning the validity of what Japan was telling the world publicly, they were deemed crazy, nuts, conspiracy theorists, and really you were just diminished by the mainstream media if you spoke up at all or questioned the official story that Japan was putting out. Well, guess what? New reports have just hit the web confirming that those cover-up theories were correct and that Fukushima's radiation levels are the highest they've ever been since 2011. And this is big because we are currently looking down the barrel of an ecological worldwide disaster. There is no two ways about it. And so you're seeing some of the articles here. Fukushima, high radiation readings, they're calling it unimaginable levels of radiation. So a man named Adam Housley, who reported from the area in 2011 following the catastrophic triple meltdown, said this morning that new fuel leaks had been discovered. Basically, they sent a robot into the crippled nuclear power plant in order to look around and see if there were any new holes, check radiation levels, and the robot was dead within an hour. All right, this is how high the radiation levels are. Robot lasted an hour before it was fried by the radiation. So it was discovered that the radiation levels were as high as 530 sieverts per hour, which are now the highest they've ever been. He said that, to put it in very simple terms, 4 sieverts can kill a handful of people. Just 4. And yet the radiation levels are up to 530 sieverts per hour. So according to these new reports, he even mentioned that critics, including the US military, have long questioned whether Tokyo Electric Power Company and officials linked to it have been providing accurate information on the severity of the radiation. TEPCO maintains that the radiation is confined to the site and not a risk to the public. The Japanese officials then said that it's expected to take at least $300 billion and 4 decades to fix this disaster. And here's the kicker. We are already detecting radiation off the coasts of California and Oregon, and scientists fear that it could get much worse. So they found this massive hole in one of the reactors, and according to their data, over 300 tons of radioactive water is going into the Pacific Ocean every single day. 300 tons of radioactive water. Now think about that. Think about what that is doing to our ocean. And the fact that they're saying that this is going to take Not only $300 billion to fix, but 40 years. So let's do the math here. 300 tons of radioactive water per day for 1 year comes to 109,000 tons per year. Now let's add that up since 2011, which comes to about 660,000 tons of radioactive water dumped into the Pacific Ocean since 2011. And you're telling me everything's going to be all right? Now, I'm not saying this to scare you guys. I mean, this has been all over the news today. All right, so this isn't some fear-mongering nonsense. This is really happening, and it's really got scientists worried. And as I said, they're already detecting levels of radiation off of California and Oregon coast. In fact, it's been found that radiation from Fukushima has tainted both the milk supplies in the United States as well as our water supply. And they cannot contain this radiation that's seeping into our oceans. The United States Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, began releasing data recently detailing the continuing rise of radiation contamination in our food supply following Fukushima. Milk and water samples from across the United States have been testing positive for a number of different radioactive elements, such as iodine-131, cesium-134, cesium-137, and a handful of others. Now, way back in April of 2011, water supplies in the U.S. tested positive for iodine-131. 3 milk samples also tested positive for the same element at amounts above the EPA's maximum levels for safety. According to a NewsTarget.com article, it was also important to note that the EPA is only testing for iodine-131 in water supply, even though there are countless other radioactive products continually being omitted by Fukushima, such as plutonium, cesium, and uranium. And none of these are apparently being tested for, at least that we know of, even though they are far deadlier than iodine-131. And if that wasn't unsettling enough, back in 2011, there were 23 water suppliers across the United States that tested positive for iodine-131, with the contamination reaching from California to New York. Now, for those of you who don't know, iodine-131 is a radioisotope that is highly radioactive and is one of the single most feared fission products that has ever been released into the environment. And they are finding this stuff in our water, in our milk, in our food, and God knows what else. And so I was watching this on the news today, flipping through channels, and I think it was maybe Fox News or CNN, one of the two. I think it was Fox News, but they were doing a report about this, and they had actually gone over to Japan, and they refused to drive their boat. I think it was no closer than a couple of miles away from this nuclear plant because they were so frightened of the radiation levels. And so with everything we just talked about, all of these radioactive materials that were found in our food and water back in 2011, well, fast forward 7 years and think about what we're not being told today. So the big question here is, what is this going to do to our oceans? And what effects has it already had? You know, if I were living out in California or on the West Coast, I would want to know whether it was safe to go swimming. I would want to know whether it was safe to eat certain seafood. And yet it would seem that the Japanese government has been acting very shady and nonchalant about this entire situation. And it kind of pisses me off because this is having a direct effect on us, not to mention our entire planet. And we can only imagine what the repercussions are going to be if suddenly all of our ocean wildlife starts dying, our water supplies start to be poisoned, and so on. So, yeah, like I said, they are detecting radiation levels. No one's saying that you can't go out and swim. But if it were me, I would drink I drink bottled water anyway. I don't trust the stuff that comes from the tap with the fluoride in it and all of these genetically modified products out there. I mean, just be careful with regards to your health, and be very careful when it comes to seafood that comes from anywhere within the vicinity of this disaster off the coast of Japan. So let me know what your take is on this disaster. Do you guys think they're covering up something more? Is there something I missed today? Give me your thoughts, and be sure to stay tuned. I've got a lot more coming. I haven't had many videos up over the past couple days, but that's only because I've been reviewing footage, catching up on emails and messages from the thousands of people who are trying to get in touch with me. So rest assured, I've got much more on the way. So be sure to subscribe, share, and stick around, and I'll see you guys back in just a bit.